still watching Plus Politics. In a ruling on Thursday, the Federal High Court, presided over by Justice Osun, actually dismissed the application of the President of the Senate, Senator Dino Melaye and Senator Ben Bruce, for lacking in merit. Now, they had filed a suit on the when the police invited them for protesting Osun polls. Now, I still have my guest with me to take a look at this story. I still have Lulu Elegbe, he's a political analyst, and Wale Amusa, a lawyer and politician. It's good to have you gentlemen once again sticking with us. So let's take a look at this situation. Now, the Federal High Court in Abuja, as I have said, presided over by Justice Osun, have immediately asked that these three senators honor the invitation of the police for questioning over their roles in the October 5, 2018 street procession staged in Abuja by the PDP. The three senators who were part of the PDP leaders who led the protest of the governorship elections in Osun State were declared to have, they declared that there was some form of hanky-panky during the elections, that Adeleke could have won. Now, the same senator they protested for had a 1-minute victory, apparently, because he was rejoicing. A few days later, a court ruling comes out, which we're still arguing on. But let's look at that protest. Okay. You're a lawyer. You know that the Constitution allows for protest as long as they are peaceful.
Freedom of association.
Yes, and of expression, of course. When I'm sure you saw the video of that protest.
Yes, I did. Did
it warrant an invitation of the police? And did you think it was peaceful in any way? Let's start from that.
Every, like you said earlier, the Constitution guarantees everybody the right to associate and to express themselves as they deem fit. But in doing so, one has to be mindful about doing so within the ambit of the law. You understand? That process was not, it wasn't peaceful, and it wasn't a violent protest. You know, but there were some less than wholesome practices that went down, as we could see from that video. So really, I think anybody inviting some members of that protest to come to answer some questions, I don't think it's totally out of it. I don't think it's out of it.
Now, the three senators had sought a court order nullifying the October 6 and 8, 2018 letters of invitation by the police. They had also said in their suit filed October 8, 2018, claiming that the police invitation amounted to harassment, intimidation, and an attempt by the police to detain them unlawfully.
Well, it's a mouthful, but no, but I mean, I agree with him. It's not, first of all, the police has the right to invite anyone based on whatever they think has gone wrong, right? And again, the protests themselves, or the protest itself, if we think back about what happened, there was, I think there was a lot of pushing, there was shoving. Like you said, it wasn't violent in the sense that people were punching or weapons drawn or anything like that. But the idea that the police invitation somehow is a breach of their human rights and all the other stuff they said, I think is ridiculous. Because I read the court the judgment, and the judge is absolutely spot on in saying that the invitation itself is not a breach of anybody's fundamental human rights, but the way you're treated when you've honored the invitation then determines if your human rights have been breached or not. So if you're going to make a case for, if you're going to make a human rights case, at least go there first. And if they then mess up there, then you can make a case to the court saying they have violated my human rights. You can't do that without even honoring the invitation.
Now, some of the prayers that were in that suit, I sound like a lawyer now. They prayed for, among others in the suit, that the court declares the act of the police dispersing their procession using tear gas as a violation of their various rights, and sought an order awarding them 500 million naira as exemplary and precautionary damages.
Yeah, but those are two different things. Because it's one thing saying we were protesting and the police did X and X, and because of that we're suing the police. But that's not even what they're saying. They're saying the police, the police inviting us is a breach of human rights. So Those are two completely different. If you want to sue the police for heavy-handed tactics during the protest, that's one thing. But if you're saying that because they invited you because of what happened at the protest, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So this idea that they used tear gas, they did all these things. You can, yes, by all means, you can take that to court and say, we think there was police brutality, they shouldn't have used these tactics. That's a fair case to make. And I think there's a police complaint body that they can also go to and do those things. But the police has a right to invite anybody, as long as the person doesn't have immunity. And as the last time I checked, it's just the president, the vice president, and the deputy governors. That's it.
So now the judge has ruled that the court cannot restrain the police from carrying out any of their statutory functions. And in the case, they have acted within the provision of Section 4 of the Police Act. And he also said that he's awarding the cost of 50,000 naira against the 3 applicants. Now, some people would say 50,000 naira is very little as compared to 500 million, but it's not our place to do that. So you are a lawyer. You tell us exactly why is the 50,000 naira being awarded? Yeah,
what the court awarded was costs against the litigants and their counsel in this case. When a court awards cost, usually it's actually a punitive measure, as you know, designed to punish frivolous applications or frivolous matters like this matter has turned out to be. You know, when the court does that, is because they frown on lawyers coming up, you know, throwing up different matters, different suits for whatever reason. So when the court finds them to be frivolous, this awarding cost against them is a way of saying, please, this was a waste of the court's time. Ensure this doesn't come up again. You understand? And it's usually against the litigants. And in some cases, the court can actually declare that the cost should be awarded against the lawyer personally. Yes, because the lawyer should know better. You understand? So it's really just a punitive measure, just to ensure that frivolous matters are punished. That's it.
Let's talk about Adeleke, Senator Adeleke, briefly. Now, he recently got a judgment nullifying his candidacy, based on his SSC, being that he did not necessarily pass his SSC on that certificate saga. A couple of people had thought that they had put it to sleep, but he has come up again. Now, I spoke to a lawyer earlier on who was trying to say that it was just a mere academic exercise. Do you agree?
Well, when you say something is a mere academic exercise, it's just for the knowledge of the people. But I don't believe that's what this is intended to achieve, because by saying that because of that failure, they're nullifying his candidature, and eventually they are trying to extinguish his mandate. It's not an academic exercise, in my opinion.
Well, he made a case saying that the Constitution has the overall powers.
Yes.
Every other law or act is subject to the Constitution. And he said the Constitution allows people seeking for these offices SSCE, first school living certificates. So it also says you can go through the secondary education, but it does not emphatically say you must present an SSCE certificate.
Yes. That's the part of the ambiguity that's created by the 1999 Constitution. 1999 Constitution is actually a body of ambiguities, you know, and several attempts have been made to amend it, and we're hopeful that this new assembly or new National Assembly will put aside their differences and, you know, come up with a constitution that will really be reflective of the will of the people. You know, but I would say that the qualification, the law really is interested in intent rather than the form. You understand? Someone has been elected by people and has been affirmed by a court. You understand? I think the law should not bother itself with trivial matters. There's a Latin maxim to that effect, but I won't bother us with that. The law should not bother. The law does not bother itself with trivial matters. It's more interested in intent rather than the form. So I'd want to believe that the arm of justice will be more interested in ensuring that the person who has the mandate of the people is properly so returned, even in the higher courts, and may decide not to dwell. You understand? On pre-qualification matters as this has been proven to be.
Okay, Lulu, I see you.
Yeah, no. I was going to say I think I disagree slightly with that because I agree with the idea that if this is the person that the people have elected, then he should lead the people. But there's also the question as to whether or not the person should have been qualified to do that in the first place.
Yes.
Because the Constitution is clear on what the qualifications for all elective positions are. Now, with regards to his school certificate issue, yes, the law does not specifically say you need to bring your SSC certificate, but it then becomes a question of, so you can, which means that you can fill your INEC form and you can say that, well, I didn't finish or I didn't go, but I'm not, I think part of the, correct me if I'm wrong, I think part of the issue here is that that was filled in the INEC form, I believe. So it's one thing to say it's one thing to say that I didn't go to secondary school or I went and I didn't finish. That's one thing. But when you then say I did finish and I scored X and X, and then people go back and say, well, actually, we can't find your records. So I think that's where the problem is. So if he had come out and said, you know what, I didn't even finish, I didn't go to school, fine, it's not a problem. But if you say I went to school, I went to these schools, I did the WAEC or whatever it was at the time, and I did maybe 10 subjects, but nobody can seem to find any records of that. Then that's a different. That becomes a different issue.
but a situation where sometimes we play, we see the theater of the absurd.
Absolutely.
So a lot of times, I remember in the course of this going back and forth, somebody came up and came with the results that yes, he actually sat for the exam and came up and he got an F9. You understand? But I came across another news report yesterday that somebody said he was an invigilator. You understand? And he didn't see him. So
I saw that as well.
Yeah, that is a prominent figure.
There were also we heard people say, oh, somebody sat for the exam for him. But I mean, it's a...
but the more absurd, this things get more absurd, really.
So, but the PDP has said that they're going to appeal this case.
Yeah, of course.
So I know that we're not supposed to try to preempt any outcome of judgments, but where do you see this going in because some people were excited he was going to get into office, but this is now a blockade of sorts. So where do you see this going? Well,
I saw PDP celebrating too early. This is it's more like a chess game. They've shown their first hand, and somebody somewhere has to play. Show his own hand as well. You understand? So we know this, as far as the APC is concerned, they have the right to go all the way to the Supreme Court. You understand? So yes, getting a victory at the tribunal was all well and good, but those people have a right to ventilate their rights up until, the Supreme Court. So I think it was a bit, like I said, it was a bit premature. Some of the what we saw, but I envisage that there'll be a whole lot more surprises, cats let out of the bag on both sides, and Nigerians will be the better for it.
Interesting. But let's come back to the three senators, the Senate President, the very interesting Dino Malaye, and of course the common sense senator. Do we see them going to the police? Because Justice Okonabang has said 50,000 naira goes to the police, and you need to show up because it is not in any way an infringement of your human rights. The police is just inviting you.
I think if history is a judge, they will not go. They will just appeal the judgment. And
but why go through that trouble if it's just an appearance?
Because that's what
because the judge has clearly said there is you're not in any way under trial or anything. We're just going in for questioning.
I'm not disagreeing with it. I actually agree with you. I'm just saying, based on our experience with how these things work, I'm almost 100% certain that they will not go. It's an appearance, like you said. I don't see them going there and them being detained or anything. I mean, the Inspector General of Police was at the Senate, I think yesterday, meeting with the Senate President, actually. And it seemed to be, from the statements released after the meeting, it seemed to be a cordial meeting. So I'm not quite sure. I mean, if they go there, chances are by the end of the day, the matter is done and closed.
Wow.
So I don't, but again, this will probably drag on for I don't know how long, but.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. Gentlemen, I've had a very lovely time having these conversations with you, Lolu Elegbe and Wale Musa. Thank you, gentlemen, for speaking with us on Plus Politics. It's been interesting.
Thank you.
Well, we'll take a break and bring you our Plus Politics package for today. And when we come back, I'll give you my take.
The Acting Inspector General of Police, Adamu Mohammed, says the primary task of maintaining law and order, internal security in the country is being challenged by inadequate funding. He said this while defending the budget estimates of the force. He used the opportunity to call for the Police Reform Trust Fund Bill to be considered to help bridge the funding gap. The Chairman Senate Committee on Police Affairs, Abu Ibrahim, agreed that there is need to find alternative source of funding for the police, with emphasis on accelerating work on the Police Reform Trust Fund Bill for it to be passed into law before the end of the 8th Assembly.
Realize that the quantum of funds required to address the operational and administrative needs of the force can hardly be met through normal annual appropriation. In this regard, therefore, the long-awaited Police Reform Trust Fund Bill pending before the Senate is aimed at bridging the funding gap. I therefore urge the 8th National Assembly to, as a matter of urgency, consider and pass into law the Police Reform Trust Fund Bill.
Before this term ends, we do whatever we can do with the leadership of both chambers to ensure that the two major bills are passed. The trust fund, we only need concurrence at the Senate. And I'm sure this will not take us more than a week. As soon as we finish these budget matters, I want, on behalf of this committee, to assure the entire police that we will look at this police and then ensure that it is concurred in the Senate so that it will be passed to the executive for assent.
The candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Nyesom Wike, who is also the incumbent governor of Rivers State, has defeated his closest rival, the candidate of the African Action Congress, Mabo Awara. Wike polled 888,264 votes to beat the candidate of the AAC, who polled 137,859 votes. INEC's collation officer for the governorship election, Professor Teddy Adias, on Wednesday declared the PDP candidate winner, having satisfied the requirements of the law and scored the highest number of votes.
This day confirming again that I'm the officer for this election, and that Nyesom Wike is of the PDP, having satisfied the requirements of the law and scored the highest number of votes, is hereby declared winner and returned elected.
Rivers State is PDP. Nyesom Wike has delivered, he has done well. The people are happy with him, the people are supporting him. 2.5 million, but incidentally, because of the level of rascality shown by our brothers, Rivers people were not able to come out and vote. But in spite of that, you can see the difference between the so-called runner-up and what the Rivers people have given to Wike.
It's time for my take. Now, in our bid to secure a lasting and a good democracy, of course, it is our conscious efforts to pick the people that we want to lead or govern us that is our responsibility. Now, who are these people? They are our friends, our children, our brothers, and our sisters. So, the onus is on us, society, fathers, mothers, wards. We are supposed to make sure that we create products that are fit to govern and lead us. Now, that duty is yours and mine. So we need to start doing that right away. I'm Mariana Cohn. It's been Plus Politics. Have a good evening.